Hello, my name is Sarah Harris and I'm with Oklahoma 4-H. And today we're going to be going over an Oklahoma Ag in the Classroom lesson that's titled Coats and Genes, Genetic Traits in Cattle. Agriculturalists are pioneers in the study of genetics and heredity. For centuries, farmers and ranchers have selected plant varieties and livestock for specific traits. Plant breeders select plant varieties which produce more seed or fruit. Livestock producers select animals with specific traits such as increased milk production, ample muscle mass, or structural correctness. Selecting for these traits has allowed agriculturalists to produce a higher quality and a more abundant food supply. Heredity is the passing on of traits from parents to offspring. Most plants and animals have two of every kind of gene, one from their mother and one from their father. Only one gene from each parent is passed to each offspring for a particular trait. There are different forms of a gene that are referred to as alleles. Alleles are forms of the same gene with small differences in their DNA sequence. These small differences contribute to each organism's unique physical features. These physical features are called phenotypes. Conversely, the unique genetic features relating to an organism's genetics are called genotypes. Some alleles are dominant while others are recessive. Dominant alleles overpower recessive alleles and are always expressed in offspring. Recessive alleles are only expressed in offspring if both parents contribute a recessive allele. In human eye color, the allele for brown eyes is dominant and the allele for blue eyes is recessive. Therefore, if the offspring receives a brown eye allele from either parent, the offspring will have brown eyes. The offspring would have to receive a blue eye allele from each parent to have blue eyes. In cattle, the allele that causes horns to grow is recessive. The hornless or polled allele is dominant. There are additional genes that affect horn-like growth on an animal's head. The horn-like growths are called scurs. Scurs are incompletely developed horns which are generally loose and movable beneath the skin and not attached to the skull. They range in size from small, scab-like growths to occasionally almost as large as horns. Because the gene for scurs is transmitted separately, it has no effect on the presence or the absence of horns. Not all horned cattle carry the gene for scurs, and not all polled cattle lack the scur gene. The absence of horns in cattle is a desirable trait for cattle producers because of the safety factor. Producers are also concerned about the economically beneficial traits such as growth and reproduction. One trait that has fascinated cattle breeders for hundreds of years is coat color. Red and black are probably the two most common coat colors in cattle. They occur as an either or in breeds such as Angus and Holstein. In other breeds, modifier genes change the shades of these colors to a much wider range of possibilities. The black gene is dominant over the red gene and thus causes the hair to be black. The red gene is recessive, and this causes the production of red pigment only. Punnett square boxes show the possible combinations of genes that an offspring may receive from its parents. The following diagram of a Punnett square, which shows all the possible combinations of two gene sets, uppercase H and lowercase h, and uppercase H and lowercase h, and the resulting genetic traits. Capital H is the dominant gene for a polled or hornless parent, and lowercase h is the recessive gene for a horned parent. Probability is the chance that something will happen. By examining these Punnett square boxes, we can see that there's a 75% chance of offspring being polled if both parents have dominant and recessive genes. There's a 25% chance of the offspring being horned. When both dominant and recessive genes are present, so capital H, lowercase h, the condition is called heterozygous. When both genes are either dominant or recessive, so uppercase H, or lowercase h, the condition is called homozygous. This simple diagram demonstrates how the genetics of one gene functions. Humans, plants, and animals have multiple genes which have complex interactions to thus determine our offspring's traits. Alright folks, now comes the fun part of genetics. Today you will be creating your very own calf using the genotypes that you figure out and applying that to your calf's very own phenotype. So the materials that you will need It's pages 7 through 10 of the Oklahoma Ag in the Classroom Coats and Genes Genetic Traits in Cattle worksheets. You'll need some coloring materials, a writing material, and a coin. As we learned in today's lesson, offspring get dominant and recessive traits from their mother and their father. So, for the purposes of today's activity, we're going to be flipping a coin to see what traits our calf will receive. So, for this activity, you will flip your coin a grand total of 12 times. There are 6 traits for the maternal genetics and 6 traits for the paternal genetics on your worksheet. So, in total, you'll flip your coin 12 times. Now, a heads trait is going to reflect a dominant trait, and a tails trait is going to reflect a recessive. If it helps you keep track, go ahead and write an H above your dominant column and a T above your recessive column for both the maternal and the paternal traits. Now that we have flipped our coins to decipher the traits that our calves will receive, let's transfer those dominant and recessive traits that we flipped from page 7 of our handout to page 8. And from there, we will be able to figure out what our colored calf will look like. Now that we have flipped our coin for all of the 12 different traits, let's go ahead and see how that's going to correlate to our calf's phenotype. So, for instance, on page 7, for the polled and horned trait, after flipping my coin, I received a tails, so a recessive trait, a lowercase h for the maternal side, and for the paternal side, I received a lowercase h, which is the tail side. So thus I have 2 lowercase h's. As a result, when I transfer these lowercase h's over onto page 8, we can see that I have a horned calf because I have 2 lowercase h's. Now that we have deciphered our calf's phenotype on page 8, we will thus reflect that with our calf's phenotype on page 9. My calf ended up looking like this. For some extra practice using probability and heredity, you can use page 10 of this handout to go ahead and get a little better at your math sequence. For more information, please go to 4h.okstate.edu or check out the Oklahoma Ag in the Classroom webpage.